All right, Jeremy, thanks for hopping on today. Just anyone watching, we're going to be doing a mock interview case. This is with myself, Ian Glennon of Custom Case Coach, and Jeremy. So thanks for agreeing to case me in this, Jeremy. What we're going to do is we're doing a case that I wrote. So, okay, I'm cheating. The purpose of this is to show you what a genuine candidate should look like. So there will be points where I ask the wrong thing or try to get information and don't get it. The whole point is to show you what would you do in that situation. I promise everyone at some point I'm going to do a case that I've never seen before, just so that you can see, I can put my money where my mouth is. But for this one, since I have this case on Custom Case Coach on the website, I wanted to basically create a, what this should look like interview. We're also going to aim for what a real interview looks like. A lot of times when I give cases or candidates give cases to each other, they're like 40, 45 minutes. The reason other candidates do it is because they don't quite know that it should be shorter. The reason I do it is because we stop and start and I'm pushing and testing out things. But a real interview, normally, you got to be done in 25 minutes. It moves quick. So we're going to jump in. Anything you want to say, Jeremy, before we jump in?
No, I'm excited for it.
All right, cool. And the case is called?
The case is called Climate Change Operations.
All right, exciting. Very relevant. Okay. All right, let's begin.
Cool. Okay, so a mid-sized manufacturing company is concerned about the potential impacts of climate change on its operations. The company has a number of factories located in coastal regions that are vulnerable to flooding and other weather-related events, and it is concerned about the potential financial and reputational risks associated with these events. The company's leadership team has asked your consulting firm to help them understand the risks they face and develop a plan to mitigate those risks. How would you help them?
Okay, great. Thank you for this. Pretty interesting. So we've got a mid-sized manufacturing company, manufacturing locations around the U.S., I believe you said.
Yes.
Coastal areas primarily or only? Was it?
A number of factories located in coastal areas and some not.
Okay, got you. But we are concerned about coastal flooding overall.
Yes.
And so we've been brought in to basically understand this flooding risk and look to mitigate it, address it. And then you mentioned that this is both financial and reputational. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Do we have a priority between those two? Is it balanced?
Yeah, let's assume financial takes a bit of precedent. That's their main objective, is to keep profitability and maintain their financial health.
Okay, makes sense. And now, is this a risk that is like, immediate near term, or is it kind of a longer term thing we're looking to mitigate? Just trying to understand timelines here a little bit.
Yeah, it's both. They're concerned that immediate weather events in the next year or two specifically could start to have an impact, and of course, longer term as well.
Perfect. And I think my final question, what does it matter what we manufacture? Do we have a company name and what we manufacture, or just curious if there's any more context?
We don't know a lot about them. We don't know a lot about them, focusing mostly on the risks here.
Okay, no worries. Okay, if you could just give me a moment, I'm going to come up with my approach to solving this problem.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think I have a good approach to solving this. I'm looking at this across 4 main areas, and across these 4, throughout each, I'm actually looking at the financial and reputational side of things.
Okay.
So in looking at that, what I'm really trying to figure out is, number 1, the chance of these flooding and climate change related events occurring. Across each factory, across each region, et cetera. Then what the damage of these events would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the implication or cost of these would be. Then thirdly, the options to mitigate. And then fourthly, the result of those mitigations. And the third one, not just options, but the cost. So the options and the cost of mitigation. And then the fourth is how, to what extent they would mitigate. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is, look at not just should we try and mitigate, is it worth it, but across the mitigation options, which ones have the ROI? And
Got it.
so in that first area, the chance of events, we really do have to look at this from a factory by factory level and a regional level. We can bring in, climate research. We can bring in past weather events. Look at projections, look at sea level rises, et cetera, to understand which factors are at risk. And, we have how often a 1 in 100-year event would occur, et cetera. Then in my second area, when we're mapping out the damage, is essentially when this event occurs for a given factory. Well, let's look at how big that factory is, how much it makes, how much it produces, what its protections currently are, high ground, if it already has walls or a water pump or whatnot, and then essentially how much damage would occur and how much that would affect our production, right? Our profit from that. Once we understand that, we know what we're trying to save. So if we know what we're trying to save, then we have to figure out what the amount up to which we're willing to pay to save it. So that's where my third kind of bucket or category comes into, which is what are the options that we have at our disposal? And these might change per factory. And how much would those actions protect our factory? So for the types of events that we've seen, a sea level rise of 1 or 2 or 3 meters, how much does a wall help? How much does a pump help? How much does, waterproofing everything help? Whatever it might be. And as we look at those options across those scenarios and the probabilistic chances, then we can basically say, okay, cool, these options are going to cost this much. And then the fourth area is, well, what is the percent chance, or how frequently will they defend us against the probabilistic outcomes of these? So I don't know what those solutions are. I don't know what they look like, but this would kind of be my approach to evaluating all of these. But, in that first area, we first have to understand what are the risks of our factories. So do you have any information on our current factories, where they might be located, what their threat levels are, anything like that?
Yeah, we do have some information. Let me give you that in a moment here. Should be coming up on your screen.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you learned from this.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So we don't quite know where our factories are yet, but we do see, almost obviously that the areas that are coastal are at risk. Big surprise there about Florida. I'm certainly never planning to buy property there, that's for sure. But it looks like we've got California, Florida, and now we're testing my geography, but I believe North and South Carolina there at the greatest risk, followed by some of those deep South states. Interesting. Okay, so if our conclusion here is that factories on the southwest and southeastern coasts are at greater risk, we do need to understand if our factories are there, and more importantly, just in general, where they are. Do you happen to have that information? Okay,
it's already on the screen.
Fantastic. So I'm just making a quick note where the high risk areas are. Just for my notes. But okay, so we've got a breakdown of the factories. Okay, so quite immediately I can see that factory A, I, and H are at the highest risk, followed with a medium risk factor, factory E and G. So, clearly what this tells us is these are the factories that we will want to focus on in regards to our objective of mitigating financial and reputational risk from flooding. We want to address the areas where flooding is likely to occur. We don't have to worry too much on this topic for this project on factory B, C, D, and F. Okay, so I've jotted that all down. Just thinking for a second.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more what risk means here? As in, do we have any figures on what medium high risk actually is?
Unfortunately, we don't know. We can assume that these are the areas of the country that are just most likely to sustain harm,
Okay.
but we don't know exactly the nature of the
Okay.
events.
Okay. And do we have figures on, how valuable each of these factories are? Do we assume that they're mostly the same, or yeah.
Yeah. What would that, when you ask that question, are you looking for like size of the factory, how valuable the real estate is, how
Yeah.
valuable, how much production it makes, specific thing you're looking for there?
Um Probably all the above. I mean, the value of that factory. So that would be the land that it's on. Although, even with flooding, is the land fully damaged? Probably not permanently, unless it's now underwater. Um, but I think our real value is the factories and their production. So whatever
Yeah.
their annual or daily value of production is, because then we understand what an interruption looks like in terms of cost until we get facilities back online. Or if it's destroyed,
Yeah.
then it's an MPV into perpetuity. So kind of it's a two-parter. It's like, what are these factories worth, and then also, do we know what the mitigating actions might be for these
Mhm.
events?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of the worth of the factories in a little while, but I'm
Okay.
curious if we, just for now, let's assume that flooding is the main event, as
Yep.
we've been kind of talking about.
Yep.
What are the leading ways that they can go about protecting these coastal factories from, let's say, existential damage?
Okay. Interesting. Um, do you mind if I just take 2 seconds to think through that?
Yeah, take some time.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay. I have a couple of different ways that I'm thinking about this. One is basically outside and inside. So if you think about outside all of these factories, there's things that you
Mhm.
can do around, put walls up, uh, put
Mhm.
levees, um, honestly, even relocate to a higher location or to another state. Um, Sorry to those who lose their jobs there. And so those are all the outside things that basically prevent the
Yeah,
water getting in. Then there's the inside things, which would be things like pumps that can pump water out. It would be, putting the water at-risk water items on higher level within the factory, and whatever is on the
yeah,
floor is fine. You just elevate. It would be like waterproofing items, things like that.
right.
Another way to look at it would be like preventing and then responding. So preventing is something, it honestly is probably pretty similar. Preventing, I think, has the same items as outside. It's walls, it's levees, it's oh, and no, and it does include all the other things I said, which is putting your factory items that are vulnerable up above
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that. But then there's responding, which is like when these events occurs, what can you do? You can build up sandbags, which actually I think I read recently don't actually work. But
But we're not doing
sandbags,
that.
no, that's right.
They should
Sandbags,
not do it.
yeah, don't do it. But I'm not an expert in flooding. Although in Brisbane over here it floods a lot. Um,
Mm,
and so with the responses, can you get a bunch of people on site with buckets? Can you get excavators? Can you bring
yeah,
in a temporary pump? Can you build temporary barricades? These are obviously going to be cheaper, probably less effective, but depending on the severity of the events, could it be a reasonable outcome? Because again, it's all about ROI. How much is it going to cost
yeah,
you versus how much do you save? So yeah, I
totally.
mean, you've got the outside and inside. Then you've also got another way of looking at, which is like preemptive prevention and then responsive reaction.
Yeah,
So yeah,
love that. Yeah, great stuff. A lot of ideas here. How would you go about picking the ones that are best? How would you evaluate
I need
which
to
ones
know
to actually
their
do?
I need to know their cost and their efficacy, right? How much are they going to
Yeah,
cost us to have, and to what extent are they going to protect the factory? And then how much value does it protect, right? If it's protects you from 50%
yeah,
of the worst case outcomes, what is the worst case
right,
outcome? Then you have an expected value or something like that.
right. Any hunches for you on which ones might be the highest yield for them?
For high risk areas, relocation. For medium risk areas, prevention, like barricades, walls, levees, going to higher ground.
Hmm.
Even in the high risk areas, if you can move to higher ground, great. But I'm sure that that's at a premium. That would be my guess, my hypothesis.
Cool. So they're looking at a few different solutions here,
Yep.
3 solutions specifically. So
Yep.
one they're calling modifying their factories.
Okay.
which would mean changing, doing some of the things you're talking about.
Yep.
Second would be insuring them. So this would be obviously buying annual insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third would be relocating, as you've discussed. So we have some data on that, and we are trying to figure out for the factories that we're most concerned about, which one of these options makes sense for those factories.
Yep.
So that data should be on your screen in just a moment here.
Okay, perfect. So looks like what we have here is those 5 factories that I identified before. And then we've got the mitigating actions, as you mentioned. Oh, and fantastic. So this is the annual profit of each factory. Is that correct in terms of the items they
That's
sell?
correct. Correct.
Okay. So we have different costs. We have this annual profit. I think the first, so I can go ahead here and calculate, the, which of these costs is lower and higher for each one.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have 2 questions to really help me here. First of all, do we know how much each of these actions would mitigate, as in their protection level?
Yeah. So you're essentially asking, would it allow us to keep producing the same profit level? Yeah, we can assume that it fully removes the risk.
Okay. So all of these protect 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I know this is an exercise. So, okay. Then the second question is, I remember, 3 of these were high risk, 2 of these were medium. Do we know to what extent each of these these annual profits are threatened? Because
yeah,
yeah,
it's a good question. Yeah, we can assume that they're at risk of being essentially wiped out in the very near term.
Okay.
So what these actions would do would prevent that from happening.
Full wipeout, not like we can recover the factory. It's like it's destroyed.
Okay. For simplicity, let's assume that.
Perfect. Makes sense. It understood, 20, 30-minute case. I get it. Okay. So, if you give me a second, what I'm thinking of doing is I want to figure out the savings of protecting, and then I want to look at the cost of protecting across these 3. Obviously, no matter what, we'd pick the lowest cost, but I also want to know if that cost is worthwhile. So if you just give me a moment, I'm going to set up my math here and get back to you with my approach.
Sounds good.
Sorry, one quick question. Insurance normally works annually. Is this the full insurance cost, like just total, or is this on a per year basis?
Per year.
Okay. Oh, interesting. And modify move is a one-off up front?
Modify is a one-off.
Okay.
And move is a one-off as well.
Okay. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. We need to look at this from like an MPV perpetuity sort of way, because we're looking at projecting future profits. So on the left-hand side, I basically have our annual profit of each factory, because I'm looking at this on a factory basis. Oh, sorry, last question. We don't get efficiencies by modifying all 5, and then it costs us 20% less or anything like that. I assume it's on a per.
No, we can treat them all independent.
Bulk. Okay. I always got to check our assumptions. So annual profit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the annual profit and divide it by our discount rate, which I'll assume is 10%, unless you feel otherwise. And then that basically.
And what's that? What does that give you? What does that give you when you do that?
Exactly. So it'll be the first one will be.
No, not the answer, but like, what is it? Yeah, what does that 30 million represent?
The value of what we're protecting, the lifetime value of protecting this factory.
Yes.
And that has to be greater than the action that we take to mitigate. And because both of these are 100%, it's quite easy, the math. So modify is going to be just the cost that we see. Move is going to be the cost that we see. And then insure is also going to be that number divided by the discount rate. So that all sounds good to you. I'm going to do this right now.
Great.
Just can fairly easily eyeball it. With factory A, that's $30 million of profit protected. So moving and modifying are both an MPV positive, but move is going to be a better choice, saving us 15 million because it's 30 minus 15. Factory E is going to be So annual profit MPV is going to be 20 million. That means, again, modify and move are going to be worth it. Insure is not, because insure is going to be 3 divided by the 10%, which is 30.
Right.
In this instance, modify is the better move. It's cheaper and it saves us 10 million. Now looking at G, annual profit is going to be, well, the NPV of annual profit is 20 million. So move is actually, we wouldn't even do. You don't gain anything from it. Modify, you gain 5 million. But actually insuring is going to be 1 million divided by the 10% discount rate, which is 10 million. So that'll actually be the cheapest option this time. So insure, which will save us 10 million, because that's going to be 20 minus 10.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have any thoughts onto why the insurance might be coming at such a low rate there.
Well, would you mind flipping back to the map by any chance?
Sure.
I didn't write down where each factory is. Factory G. Well, it looks like it's a little bit more inland. And that's, oh, now you're testing my geography. It's next to the one on the left is Louisiana. I think that one might be Mississippi. Or I think it's Mississippi. There's some of the cheapest states in America. So it might be that insurance there is just cheap.
Could
It
be.
might be that there are already some mitigations in place in the factory, or that it's on higher land, so the insurance companies
Yeah.
just see it as lower risk. It might be
Totally.
it's in a medium risk area, but the actual location is lower risk. But also, I mean, it's a medium risk state as opposed to the high risk states. So there's that
Yeah,
as well.
that's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, all those are valid. Cool.
Makes sense. Okay, yeah, super interesting. But then, of course, we have all the other ones that are just far higher. I mean, H and I are just enormous in their insurance costs.
Huge,
Now,
yeah.
this is interesting, though. H is by far our most profitable factory. So, I mean, we have to protect it. And just, again, eyeballing it, you've got 40 million in profits you want to protect. Cost to move is going to be the cheapest. So we're going to
Yeah.
save. So I'm going to write down move, and we're going to save 25 million.
Mhm.
And finally, with I. Oh, wow. Okay. So modify is more expensive than the 30 million. 50 is greater than 30. Insuring 150 million, MPV is going to be more than that 30, and move is more. So unfortunately with I mean, we basically can't do anything. I don't know if that means we do nothing or we preemptively shut. We had mentioned, so right now we're looking at, actually, let me take a step back.
Sure.
Factory A, we should move. Factory E, we should modify. Factory G, we should insure. Factory H, we should move. And then I, basically none of these options work. I have two questions. First one, is there anything else that we can do? Can we make any of these options cheaper, or do we have any other options?
I assume we could try to negotiate the insurance, but for simplicity, let's assume we cannot.
Okay.
And then there are no other options.
Okay. So far, we've looked at financial. My second question is, do we have any information on the reputational risks, or is this just more to be assumed as a secondary kind of thing?
It's a secondary thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That leads me to believe that, with I, we have two options, is to basically just let it go until a big event hits, or shut it down preemptively because we wouldn't want the reputational risk. Do you have any information there to help me out? Help me out with our decision making there?
Which way do you lean, just based on what you said right there? Those two options.
Well, because factory I is in the highest risk area, not a medium risk, and we care about reputational, and we also said that there's 100% chance that this event occurs.
Yeah.
I think we'd have to shut it down preemptively.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other? I think I'm ready to make my final recommendation, but I just want to check if there's any other information out there that I should be aware of.
Nothing else. Ready to hear what you recommend for this company to address these climate threats.
Perfect. Sounds good. I'm going to take a moment to gather my thoughts.
Okay.
Note to the candidate: an interviewer can say, actually, the partner has just walked into the room, or the client has just walked in the room. What do you think? So Jeremy wasn't mean enough to me. I'm going to be mean to myself, and I'm going to say I just have to go now. Okay. So I recommend.
No, you have to take a minute, Ian.
I have to take a minute. Yeah, there's that. So my recommendation is that we take a number of. We can stop the exhibit sharing.
Yeah.
My recommendation is, never say that to the interviewer. My recommendation is that we take a number of mitigating actions for the factories that we have in high risk areas. That's factory A, E, G, and H, and I that are in the high-risk areas. I recommend we move factory A, we modify factory E, we insure factory G, we move factory H, and we do nothing for factory I. These actions in total will give us $60 million in preemptively in savings in terms of future damage. And the reason I recommend this is all of these actions are the cheapest action that results in protecting a larger amount of future profits. For factory I recommend that we shut it down preemptively, and that is because there's no option that we can do to mitigate this risk profitably, and because reputation is a big issue, and these events are 100% likely to occur, we need to prevent that reputation risk. We're going to lose the profits anyway. We may as well prevent our reputation. There's a couple of risks that I see here. First of all, with the two factories that we're moving, the problem is we might be replacing one problem for another. You know, geopolitical and climate events happen almost everywhere. You have earthquakes, you have tornadoes, etc. You have inland flooding. So moving these factories, we might be at risk of replacing one problem with another. That's my first concern. Secondly, I think that it's a little bit risky to think that these events are going to occur at 100%, and also that these mitigations will work 100%. So therefore, my next steps would basically be to suggest that we do a full climate and natural weather and geological assessment of all of our factories across all risk factors, not just flooding, to really understand what is the total risk profile of all of these, and do the same process that we had, the percent chance of them happening and mitigating actions and how much. And that would help us with the moving, as well as our other factories that we think are low risk but may not be. That would be very helpful. In terms of my second point, you know, of course, I don't always like to recommend relooking at assumptions, but we should do a deep dive into those true risks and understand what that really looks like mapped out across a probabilistic stochastic model. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, cool. No, thank you. Great. So any feedback or comments there in our remaining minutes?
That was great. I thought it was a great performance from Ian Glennon.
Who wrote the case?
Author worthy. No, it was solid. I felt like you were really having a 360-degree look at things and considering all the factors at play. Even just like the recommendation there at the end, I could see you were thinking steps ahead, right? Like if you're moving a factory, what is that implying? And so then now what do we have to think about?
Yeah.
That's what stood out. I thought everything else went smoothly.
It's funny. I know that, you know, a viewer might be like, oh, he wrote this case, so he knows. I mean, I haven't looked at this case in a year. And yes, you know, I remember the exhibits and all that, but I didn't pre-think my framework. I didn't pre-think my recommendation. I didn't pre-think what I was going to say when I did the math and all that. Like, I wasn't winging it, but it wasn't rehearsed. And if we recorded this again, I'd do it differently, you know, and that's not better or worse. It would just flow different. I'd have different questions. But the idea is, okay, show that you're thinking about this thing zoomed out, you know, even though I knew you didn't, you know, one thing I did know is I knew you didn't have like the reputational risk data, but you have to ask it. And if it were a different case and I hadn't written it, or maybe I wrote it on a different day with a different mindset, I would have reputational risk. So that's the exact point, is it's like, as a candidate, you can't predict where these cases are going, but you do know that there are 2 or 3 pathways, and you have to check each pathway, and the interviewer will take you down that. Yeah.
For sure. I have one other framework that I might have deployed here. So I'm curious what you think. So if we're trying to think about understanding the risks, I could have mapped risks across 4 different types. So we know that reputational is one of them. There's like safety and people risk. There's like risk to the product, and there's risk to the real estate. And so I think you can map like those as the threats, and then different levers to pull to like address each one.
So within each bucket, you'd say, what are the things we could do to mitigate that? What would be the cost? And then how much would it mitigate? So
something like that.
It's basically flipping the angle of attack. Yeah.
Like transpose it. Yeah.
Well, I always say, you know, slice your cake vertically or horizontally, right? but you can't do both, right? If we had done, let me look at the chance of events, let me look at the options to mitigate, then let me look at financial risks, let me look at
Yeah, of
reputational
course.
risks, let me look at land
They don't
risks. They
match.
don't match. It's slicing it
No.
horizontally and vertically. I like that. I've
Yeah.
never thought of that framework. It's meaty and a good approach. I like it. Yeah, could have worked as well. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's when I read the case, that's how I thought I would do it,
Interesting. It would have worked. I mean, again,
It's
it's
the
the
same thing. It's
it's
just a
the
different
yeah, it's your approach to solving the problem, and the case will never go exactly how you've planned it, but your framework has to handle whatever route it goes down, right? And yours would. My favorite question: how many sheets of paper do you think I used?
it's always double what I think. 6?
Actually, no. This time it's
You're
4.
gonna become known as Ian the paper
The
killer,
paper, yeah,
Glennon.
I kill trees. Yeah, yeah. Um, no, I like trees. It's where I find all my Australian nature. So,
Uh,
no, I actually had 4.
Save
I didn't
paper.
in this one. I didn't have a math sheet because I didn't need it.
Uh,
First page is obviously framework, notes, and all that. Second page was the factories, and it was actually both exhibit 1 and 2 because normally I say you have to have a separate sheet for each, but in this case, it was just one piece of data, right? Is where the
mhm,
factories were, and I wrote down the high risk factories and the medium, and that's it. Then the third sheet was our brainstorming,
mhm.
the flooding protection, and then the fourth sheet was the mitigation, so that third exhibit. And I just did my math on there because there wasn't, you always have to do your math setup on that sheet, but then I didn't need to go to a separate page because like the numbers were just there, so I just wrote them down. And I just had, please excuse my handwriting, but I just had exactly what the factories were. Yes, I write like
Yeah,
a child,
nice,
but yes, there you go.
nice.
And then obviously the recommendation goes up front. And then just for the viewer as well, the notes that I wrote were basically mid-size, Man U, not Man United, but Man U manufacturing, climate change, coastal factories, and flooding. And that's all I wrote. And that's all you need. And I was pretty confident with my buckets. I knew that thinking
Nice.
through it more and writing out more wasn't really going to help me in this instance. So I was like, you know what? I have enough with my buckets. I'll just talk through each one. So you don't always have to flesh everything out. They're not going to see the sheet of paper. Yeah.
Yeah, you were
Final
fast,
thoughts? Parting thoughts?
fast with that one.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. No, it felt very natural and like you were actually trying to solve the problem, which is always a positive. And it felt like by the end of it, you did.
Cool. Did I get the job, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it depends what job, but I think most, yeah, you got
as a truck driver, as a
you
garbage man. Yeah. Hey, they're paid highly over here in Australia. But anyway,
if this
as they should be.
video continued for 6 hours, Ian's phone would ring and it would be, "Hey, this is Jeremy from whatever company
Yeah,
we're applying
I
to.
get
We
the
got
offer
some good
same
news
day.
for you."
Yeah, this is a same day offer performance. I like it. You'd
Yeah.
hope so. You'd hope so. Jeremy, thank you as always. Thanks to all the viewers. If you can like and subscribe, really appreciate it. See you guys next time. And I think our plan is you're going to give me a case I've never seen before for the next one. So that'll be fun.
Exactly. You got to come back for that one. It's going to be fun.
Yes, sir. We'll do. Cheers. Appreciate it.